1954 season began on April 11th with a split round over the Easter holiday. St Kilda, battling to climb out of the Cinderella division, played Footscray, who had finished third in 1953. The captain coach of Footscray in 1954, Charlie Sutton.
We came in 25 with Hawthorn, St Kilda and North Melbourne, and we were the babies of the league, and naturally we were very proud when we were the first side to come from the association to win a grand final.
In round 8, Essendon, one of the 53 finalists, downed North Melbourne in what was to be fabulous full forward John Coleman's last match. He was leading the goal kicking for the season with 42 and kicked 5 goals before being carried off with a serious knee injury. Only the week before he had kicked 14 goals, a personal best and an Essendon club record. At the halfway mark, the final 4 was anyone's guess. Footscray led the ladder, but only one game separated them from North Melbourne, who were in 8th place. And the bottom 3 teams of 1953, Richmond, Melbourne and Hawthorn, were only out of the 4 on percentage. But Footscray were a confident team. Charlie Sutton.
I thought we had a very good show, the way we were performing, the way we were going along, because we had to beat some good sides, but we had a very good side ourselves, and they had to come up to us and beat us. Therefore, I thought we had a very good show.
You did well in 1953.
Yeah, we done well in 53. We got into the finals, we got into the second semi, and I think that grounding that we got from those finals and the experience from them helped us to go on the way we did in 54. We had a lot of good players. You know, we also had a very good, strong administration, a good administration. You know, in football, lots of players and everybody sort of get the pats on the back. But then there's a lot more goes on behind the scenes. It's got to be a complete club effort, and not only a team effort on the ground, but it's got to be a wholesome club effort. And with it being that way, we were very fortunate to have those players that had natural ability, plus we had an administration that was controlled by our secretary at the time, which they're general managers now, which kept them in place, which then helped our fellas, the players, not to become complacent, because he could look after them and I could look after the players, and the build-up to it then became pretty natural.
Round 16 on August 14th began with Geelong and Collingwood, both on 10 wins, then Footscray, Richmond, Essendon and North Melbourne on 9, and Melbourne on 8. When the day's games were over, Essendon were second, the Dons led Collingwood by percentage, followed by Footscray, North Melbourne, Richmond and Melbourne. In the last round, the top 6 teams played the bottom 6 teams, and the final 4 was at last clear: Geelong, Footscray, North Melbourne and Melbourne. The first semi-final was between Melbourne and North Melbourne, and Melbourne won by 30 points. During the game, the crowd were stunned when umpires directed team runners off the field. Runners carrying coaches' messages to players had been a controversial issue all season, and it finally came to a head. Even runners on legitimate errands were barred. In the second semi-final, Footscray played Geelong. Bernie Smith captained Geelong, but Footscray captain coach Charlie Sutton was out with a knee injury.
Well, I had a bit of a sore leg, and I thought if we got over Geelong and beat them, well, that'd give me 2 weeks before the grand final, and that'd give me plenty of time. If we didn't get over Geelong, we had to play the next week. I was confident I could have played the following week because the leg was coming along very good and we were nursing it right, and which proved out we had the fortnight spell, which has done us a lot more good.
Footscray won by 23 points. A highlight was fullback Bernie Henderson's kick-off that landed only a few feet from the centre line. In the preliminary final, Melbourne defeated Geelong in a game battered by wind, rain and hail, and by umpire-crowd antagonism. Angry over umpiring decisions, the crowd chanted out a boxing referee's count of 10 on the umpires on several occasions. The grand final was played on September 25th before a crowd of 80,897 people. Jeff Collins captained Melbourne, and Charlie Sutton was back in form to lead Footscray onto the MCG. What was it like leading them out onto the MCG?
Oh, it's a feeling you've got to experience, really, to know what it's like. It just sort of builds you, makes you grow as high as the grandstands at the Melbourne Cricket Ground when you run out onto the ground, and I think every player felt the same. That when you run out, it's just that roar, the scream of the crowd sort of grabs you, you know, and that makes you feel as though you've just got to do better than you're really prepared to do. You've just got to do that extra.
What else do you remember about the day, the actual game?
Oh, I remember our first goal. Once we got that, I said, well, that's one they've got to get. And each one we got, I thought, well, that's another one they've got to get. And luckily we doubled their score. And we thought that Melbourne done well. They played well that day. But we just had that little bit more class, that little bit more experience. And I think that's what caused our fellas to go on with it. It was a great day. I remember talking to Norm Smith that night after the grand final. He says, well, you've won this one. He says, but by God, you're going to make it. We're going to make it hard just from there on. And I think for about the next 14 or 15 years, they did make it hard at Melbourne. They'd done nothing but win premierships.
But in 1954, it was Footscray that won, and the fans were still outside the Footscray Town Hall at 9 o'clock that night, despite the pouring rain. What about coming back to the West that night?
Oh, well, that's a scene you'd have to look at and see, really, to believe, you know. Now you've got the underpasses and overpasses going down past the Footscray Town Hall. In those days, they only had the gates. Well, the gates were locked, and people, all you could see from the town hall was heads and heads and heads and nothing else. And then when you came back up to the rooms here that night, well, it was just the same thing. You'd reckon you would have been at a night football match. There was that many people round the ground and wanting to get in and see the players and that. But you just couldn't, you know. It was just something that's that hard to explain. And, you know, such a great memory. It's very hard to realise just what did go on that night and what didn't. I think one of the main features of it, you know, in those days you had the West was very well known, you know, to some of their great fighters out here, like Ambrose Palmer, Frankie Flannery, Pran Micas. Those fellas of support, and Jackie Kirkham, you know, all those fellas of support they used to give us round the club in those days was unbelievable.
And they were all there to welcome you home?
They were all there, and I think they were all around for the following week too, because I don't think anybody got very far out of Footscray, away from Footscray for the following week, being our first premiership.
The Bulldogs won the premiership by 102 points to 51 points and took the flag home to Footscray for the first time ever.
Nice one there. The footy record of the Bulldogs' one and only premiership win in 1954.